Okay. So, I'm just going to go through the thoughts that I had previously and just discuss a little bit. So it says, let us seek the possibilities within the three worlds of body, soul, and spirit. And body, to understand body, and actually Steiner goes through this, is that if you start with the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the human kingdom, then those all are related to body. And another way, we talk about the fourfoldness of body. And the fourfoldness of body is the physical, the etheric, the astral, and the ego. These are all ways we are present. So body means presence. There are all ways in which we are present. We're present physically. We're present in our vitality, in our lives, in our living. We're present in our emotional and ideal expressions, and we're present in our intentions. I can observe these in the other. I can observe your intention. I can observe your ideals and feelings. I can observe your vitality, and I can observe you in a sensorial way, just the physical being. So the body talks about the fourfold ways that we are present. Now, Steiner says that in reality, and this is true, in reality we don't observe the physical. We observe the influence of the physical on the etheric. All that we see is etheric. It's the ether being shaped by the nature of the physical. So you can think of, if you look at what we understand about the human body itself, we have this DNA, which then informs how we grow and how we develop. So if we think that the physical really, as scientists look at the physical and they get smaller and smaller and smaller, what they find more and more and more are little systems of information. And the physical body is DNA. Actually, when we think of quanta, that's why they call them the smallest part of the physical body are called quanta. They are little bits of information. So in a way, the most fundamental level, what we're talking about as being physical, is simply a system of information that informs, and this is where we come with forces, informs the etheric how to organize itself. So we really I can't even touch the real physical nature of this. The forces, its organization of the forces, actually, even though I perceive myself as touching something, in reality we know through science that I'm actually the electromagnetic force in my hand, which is expressing itself, is experiencing, repulsion or attraction as a result of the electromagnetic forces in the table. And so really we have this organization of the etheric which manifests as forces. And then we actually perceive the etheric. Science says we don't have a physical heart, we have an etheric heart. Our bodies are made out of the ether of the universe. And science, in a sense, verifies that in its understanding of what is when we get down to what is truly physical, we get down to what scientists believe are the smallest packets of information in the mineral system. And in the life system, we get down to the DNA and everything being. So these systems of information then inform the expression of the etheric, which is what we actually perceive. Now, of course, above that, we have emotions and ideals, or the vitalities. We have the vitality, which is the etheric activity, being informed by the physical. And then we have the beginning of the individual expression of that organization of etheric forces, which usually manifests first in the plant world, of course, which is intrinsically etheric. And then in the animal world, which is intrinsically astral, which is the feeling realm, there's soul there. And then in the human realm, where we know spirit is awake. That's not to say spirit isn't all the way down to the physical world, but spirit is only awake in human beings. And and actually Steiner not here so much, talks about body. The book that's most important for Waldorf teachers is called The Study of Man. And it's called something else, but it's called also now The Foundations of Human Experience is another title that they have. But this is basically, this is the Bible. I would say the Bible of Waldorf education is a book called The Study of Man. So everyone should be reading The Study of Man. That's usually a part of the foundation study also in most trainings. And basically what the study of man does, it takes the body, the soul, and the spirit and talks about how we are aware in ourselves and others of these three. The body, we are aware of, in science says, into two expressions of form. What we call the ray and the arcing, the spherical forms. That if you look at the body, it can give you an indication of how the spirit, in a sense, how creative forces are acting in the body by virtue of whether there's a raying quality, like the head has a spherical quality, and the arms and legs, the limbs are a raying quality. So that has to do with the nature of these in their connection to the formative forces in the world. And so Steiner talks about how to understand presence or bodily nature through looking at whether there's a ray. He also talks about a pressing in or a pressing out. So you can look at the raying form, the curving form, the pressing in, the pressing out, and you can get a sense. It's like you can read the hidden connectedness to the soul and spirit world in recognizing whether there's a raying or a curving quality. It's not the scope of our talk today to get into those in detail. And then he talks about the soul realm. How do we look at the soul and have an understanding of what's going on in the soul in its relationship to the other two? And he talks about the forces of antipathy and sympathy. And so in the soul realm, so in the physical realm we have this form, this raying in, this curving quality, this pressing in and pressing out. In the soul world we have these forces of antipathy and sympathy. Whether or not we feel attracted to something or we feel repulsed by something, pain, pleasure, all of these things all have to do with the way. So we look at a human being and we say, what are the qualities of antipathy and sympathy that they express in the world? And that can tell us something actually about how the soul is relating to their physical and their spiritual constitution. So that's a picture. That balance or imbalance of antipathy and sympathy is a picture of that connection with the spirit world and connection with the bodily world. And what about the connection of the spirit world with the soul and body? And it has to do with the ideal of sleeping, dreaming, and waking. For instance, it's all in the connection with the physical body. The spirit is always sleeping. Well, that's not quite true. Say in connection with the blood element, the tissue element, the spirit is sleeping. You cannot be conscious in those elements. In the nerves, of course, which are close to being dead, is where we become awake. So actually, it's the dead places in the body is where the spirit can become awake.
Nerves?
The nerves are the most dead element, the dead in our body.
How is that?
Well, just biologically, they don't have the metabolic quality of some of the other cells. They're very mineralized. They're very mineral-like.
I'll accept that.
You know, that's why you can have electrical forces going through them and stuff. They're very much closer to chemistry, inorganic chemistry, than say the tissues in the body or the things that form the other organs. And so they're less active, and we become awake by virtue of that, as Steiner suggests. So we can look, and so spirit is then free in the dead places, and spirit is awake. And so in our brain, which is mostly dead, actually, more dead, the brain, if I stick something into the brain, actually the brain doesn't feel that any pain. The brain carries pain, though. It carries from the soul to our consciousness impulses of pain, or the dead things do. So just to summarize, we can look at the body, the soul, and the spirit, and Steiner says in different ways we can then determine how they're related to the other two. So in the body, we look at whether or not the form of the body is raying or curving. And that can tell us something about its connection.
Are you saying raining?
Raying, R-A-Y-I-N, raying, I'm sorry. Linear raying, straight line,
Yeah.
or is there a curving quality? And this basically proceeds from limbs to the torso, which is beginning to curve, to the head, which is fully spherical. And these are relating. The middle realm relates more to the soul realm, the head realm more to the spirit, and the linear realm is more physical and takes us out into the world. And then we can look at the soul itself, and we say that we know that it is the balance or imbalance of the forces of antipathy and sympathy that give us, the balance of pain. It's not really pain and pleasure. The forces of antipathy and sympathy are not synonymous with pain and pleasure, but this feeling of dislike or like, this force of sympathy and antipathy. What the balance is? There too much sympathy? Is there too much antipathy? Is there a balance between those? Like basically, the more antipathy there is, the more actually we are waking up to spirit, which is always kind of a little bit of a contradiction. But we're more asleep in sympathy and less awake to spirit. So we're looking to find the balance between antipathy and sympathy. And of course, then as I said, in the realm of spirit, it's sleeping, dreaming, and waking. And of course, sleeping in the bodily nature, dreaming in the soul realm, and then being fully awake in the spirit realm. And you can then look at another human being or itself, and we can find what is the quality, what is their spiritual quality. Are they more asleep? Are they more dreamy? Are they more awake? You can see what they're relating to in their own being more. Okay, so that's let us seek the possibilities within the three worlds of body, soul, and spirit. And so that's where those are the ways in which we can discover what's going on. And Study of Man, of course, is a very important book if you haven't read it, or the Foundations of Human Experience to explore. Because basically it's in 3 sections, and it's body, soul, and spirit. And it goes through that in detail, more detail than I'm going to. Thus make the cycle from abundant possibility to choice and consequence, from consequence and choice to abundant possibility. So basically we now have the possibility of anthroposophy. Because of this awareness, we can begin to exercise our human wisdom in the world, which is really the purpose of this differentiation. Steiner, the differentiation, you have this kind of interesting thing as a human being develops. You sort of have this integration, and then you have a differentiation as an adult. We integrate body, soul, and spirit. The body comes in, the soul forces come in, the spirit. We're actually integrating those in our early development. And then at a certain point, we actually have to differentiate. As adults, we have to differentiate body, soul, and spirit. We have to be able to determine what is active in our endeavors. And if we aren't able to determine what is active in our endeavors, then we really, in a sense, don't become adults.